appreciate the chairman having this hearing, and this is a classic case where we've not only gone into the weeds but into the hog farms, which I think gets us back pretty much to where Mr. King ended here, because he said there were regulations in effect, and Mr. Kennedy said those regulations are not being followed. The hearing, interestingly enough, is about whether the regulations even will be in effect, because when we don't protect ourselves from these kind of midnight rulemaking procedures, then we have the prospect, at least, that not even the regulations will be in effect. There'll be a new set of regulations that have wiped out the past ones that in the middle of the night. And so for us to focus on any one of the particular, not that this testimony hadn't been interesting and entertaining, and I'm sure there are other people here who will focus on other rules that were either changed or not changed at the last minute. The real policy question we're confronted with is how can we protect ourselves against this kind of midnight rulemaking, and that really has no substantive content to it. It's a policy content, because sometimes when we protect ourselves against midnight rulemaking, it will be against protecting ourselves against rule changes that we would like to have made, and sometimes it will be protecting ourselves against changes that we would not like to have made. But the policy question remains the same, and on that score, I think I am fully, although I haven't looked at the details of Mr. Nadler's bill, I'm fully supportive of the concept of his bill, and would just give one illustration where there was bipartisan agreement that the rules should not be changed. I happen to sit on the Financial Services Committee and chaired the Oversight Subcommittee, and we had a hearing about the real estate procedures closing process. The rules that were proposed right at the end of the Bush administration, Republicans, there wasn't a single person who showed up who supported the changes that were being proposed, either Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, however you wanted to categorize them. Everybody testified against the changes that were being proposed, and sure enough, in the dark of night, at a time when it appeared that the administration couldn't do, the new administration wouldn't be able to do anything about it except in a very limited way by going within 60 days and under the Congressional Review Act, going through something as difficult as those rules and trying to understand them. There was no way to reverse them. So the concept, the policy of having a more transparent process, I hope Mr. King isn't disagreeing with, even though he might want to go at the witness on the weeds or the hogs or whatever it is that he was questioning. The real policy question is, should an administration that's on the way out Republican or Democrat, because there will be a Democratic administration at some point on the way out. Remember that. Is it a good policy practice to allow them just willy-nilly to change the rules that have been in play for so long? And I hope there's nobody here who disagrees with the policy that is a bad idea. I mean, and I would have to say it's a bad idea whether, regardless of the content of what the new rule is, and regardless of whether it's an outgoing Republican administration or an outgoing Democratic administration. That's what we need to be dealing with in this committee. And I didn't ask Mr. Kennedy any questions, but I hope you'll just say you agree with that or you don't.
The caveat I have about that is that under the current regimen, the way that the regulatory process works, there's so many obstacles to new regulations being passed that it takes, in fact, I had a lawsuit against the federal government, against the EPA, in which this became a contention and was settled in court, and they said that if a regulatory agency jumps through all the hoops that it's supposed to do from the beginning, from the original notice and comment to the end of the regulatory process, that an average regulation takes about 8 years to get through the regulatory process. So,
all right, but you can't have this both ways, Mr. Kennedy.
No, and all I'm saying.
And as a policy matter, it's hard for us to be on both sides of this issue. I understand the concern about the length of time that it takes to do rulemaking, but if every administration is operating under the same set of procedures, they have to get through that process either far enough in advance of the time so that the new incoming administration, or they shouldn't be able to do it at midnight on January 19 when they're going out.
Well, here's the thing, Congressman, is that during the Clinton administration, many of these, the administration tended to go through all of those steps carefully in the regulatory process, and at the end they ended up with a big balloon of regulations that they dumped in the last couple months. But in this administration, a lot of these midnight regs, the regulatory process just began in May or June or July or August, and in one case, the case of the Endangered Species Act, they received tens of thousands of comments. They had the comment reviewers had to review an average of 9 comments per minute in order to get the regulations out. Well, so, they weren't doing what they were supposed to do. These are genuine midnight regulations that didn't receive the
I think we are generally on the same side of the issue.
Time has expired.
I just want to be sure that neither Democrats nor Republicans can game the regulatory system by doing this, and that's the point I'm trying to make.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. The gentleman concurs.